Well, Andrew, this is kind of exciting to see how things are taking off from just sitting around the table discussing truth and liberty and what comes next. But as we're sitting here this weekend, I am convinced that there's a bigger story here than maybe many of us are aware of. You see, the thing that happened in 2004 in Colorado was a real blueprint for something that got unleashed since then. And the challenge is the church, for the most part, has still not understood what is happening to America. And our default position is, I fear, to oversimplify the issue. Because it's more than just a battle with spiritual forces. It's a battle with spiritual forces that have released intelligence on how to storm the cockpit and take over the plane of a nation. And you will not affect what is happening in that cockpit unless you get there yourself. And so, knowing what has happened and how to go there, the key verse for the church is from Matthew 28, where Jesus said, "All authority in heaven and earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, teaching them." So those of us that have been teaching, Andrew Womack, myself, we could be still existing in our own kind of fertile, separate worlds, except that we got teamed up together by the Lord. And when we got together, we started talking about what's happened in America. And I appreciated the bold stand that Andrew Womack took regarding marriage, because so few Christians did that. And I appreciated he was the only pastor. Andrew was the only national ministry that would see a message from me regarding what was happening in the election and then put it out to his organization. So he went right up on my radar. I said, so this guy's different. Because even though he's like, he is famous in the world that I was in for his teaching ministry from the Bible, he actually, when he sees an issue, he'll go after it and take that thing on. And he doesn't care about the size of the giant he's messing with. And so we got connected. Now here's the thing, I didn't realize till today, this is how you know it's a revelation, that the state of Colorado, I'm going to show you how it got taken over and how it became the test case for how we watched all the unfolding anarchy in the United States take place since then. And then how God raised up Donald Trump, which is even more intriguing to me now that I know what God did. So I'll tell you what, I'm going to go through the presentation. And then where's Neil Forsberg? Neil, you in this audience? I got a friend of mine. Are you in the back there? I want to catch you. I have a friend of mine I led to the Lord at college. Haven't seen him since college days. And I remember, because I shouldn't even probably say this, you could probably still get arrested for what you did in college. Like, he was in charge of, well, it's actually legal to smoke marijuana now. So he would be in charge of party beverages from, I don't know, he'd throw parties, beer parties, and give out stuff people could smoke. Anyway, so I got saved when I was in military school, and then I got filled with the Holy Spirit. Became like a Pentecostal in college. And I had a home Holy Ghost prayer meeting I used to go to on Monday night. And so it was a whole Pentecostal group, and we had like Mennonites and brethren there. Girls had bonnets on, and they had shit covered their arms. So it was an unusual group. And they sang out of a hymn book, and like I came out of rock culture, and then they do these wonderful songs, and charismatic songs hopping around. But it was a Holy Ghost meeting. I would come back to the campus. And thank God for those meetings, because I'd come back, like kind of like, you would just say, as the Apostle Paul said, drunk in the Holy Ghost. I just had this look, like I was high. And so Neil's looking at me, and he see me going off the campus with the Bible, coming back, and finally he stops me one day, he goes, hey, I think he wanted to debate me, actually. That's what I found out later. He wanted to debate me about theology. He goes, hey, I know what you're doing. watching, don't worry, I won't tell anybody. You got the drugs. And you're kind of like partying and coming back, and I know where you keep them. I go, I'm like, I have snooker in this room. I go, where's that? He goes, in your Bible. So he thought my Bible was hollowed out. I had drugs in the Bible. It's brilliant. Nobody would even think a religion major with a Bible hollowed out. Perfect. He goes, can I see? I go, okay. I get my Bible, and it's all like underlined. He's going through like, whoa, where's the drugs? I go, no, it's like, it's Jesus, man. It's Jesus. So I had no real skill in soul winning. I think I told him to go back to his room to see Jesus himself. But we had a move of God. For some reason, God has sense of humor. Because obviously, I was an actor. I was a thespian. But they put me with the football team. And I don't know why that was, but my roommate was the center of the football team. And they called him Mongo from Blazing Saddles, because he was just a human guy. And next door to me was Neil Forsberg and Joe Beasley, who was the quarterback, who was backslidden. And Neil doesn't know that, because Joe's acting like an alien on campus. So Neil gets saved. He tells Joe, he gave his life to Jesus. Joe starts crying. He goes, Neil, I'm what you call backslid. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Christianese, I don't know what that is. He comes to me, and so we start a movement. And we had a chair in my room. Of course, I got the center of the football team saved. And we had a chair in my room. We call it the Holy Ghost hot seat. We would sit around and wait for someone to come by with a fly trap. They'd come in, and when they sat on the seat, they'd get saved. So we had such a move of God, I got virtually expelled from the university because they thought I was starting a cult.
Wow.
But that's not my presentation. We're going to change it. Here we go. So here I was. So I meet Donald Trump. I get called up to Trump Towers. And I have this experience where I'm teaching 7 mountains. And somehow I end up getting called up to go meet Donald Trump. And while I'm up there, the Lord is telling me that there's 16 other people running. And of course, every evangelical friend of mine is going to promote Ben Carson or Mike Huckabee or Ted Cruz or Marco Rubio. I was going to say Mario Murillo. And so Donald Trump was the only heathen in the group. And that's the one the Lord says, that's him. I said, oh, you're kidding. This is going to be like a back sandwich. No one's going to this. And sure enough, nobody wanted to hear it. Until they started dying off, and the people wanted to debate me. How can you even support a heathen, a barbarian like that? And I thought, let's wait, we'll see what happens. So, anyway, the president, Donald Trump gets the nomination, and I was just taking a bold stand, and I'm saying, this is it. This is it. Maybe it's because the church hasn't done what it's supposed to do, so God's going to fix things his own way. So all the pious, embarrassed evangelicals will have to endure what it's like to have a Philistine prophet, let's say a Philistine slaying prophet like Samson, with his torrid history of babes in his background. So we go into that, and then I'm in Jerusalem at the time when, and I just like to put a book out. So the Lord told me to write this book. So I put the book out, which was, God's Chaos Candidate, Donald Trump, the American Unraveling. It was, unfortunate, it was only a few weeks before the election. Came out during the Feast of Trumpets. I'm part Jewish. I've got an Ashkenazi Jewish background on my father's side. I'm visiting my family in Israel. I'm at the Mount Sinai Temple meeting with diplomats from the United Nations. I'm teaching a little. And someone comes in and goes, oh, too bad, huh? I go, too bad. He goes, can you get your book back? I go, what do you mean? Did you release it? Yeah, I released it before I flew out to here. Oh, you didn't hear? About the Access Hollywood video. I said, well, how bad can the video be? Oh, how bad that video was. I got the transcript. If you've ever read the transcript, you probably haven't read the transcript. Both don't even read it now. I'm reading the transcript, I'm thinking, there's no way this man can survive. And the first thing I did was I get on my knees at the Mount Sinai Hotel, and I did what every Jew has done for thousands of years. I start kvetching. I go before I said, why did I not say, don't let me be deceived? Did I not say, I don't want to be involved in politics? I kept saying, oh God, if this isn't you, take it from me. all day, but I'm not going to talk to you about that. So I got up and Lord said, you better do something. What am I supposed to do? Lord said, open your mouth and I'll fill it. So I lean out the window on the second floor of the Mount Zion Hotel, and I try to do damage control for anyone who bought my book. I figured I'm just going to double down on where I was. I'm going to come up with, and as I'm talking, I said, you know what's happening? Do you think God is taken by surprise with what's happening? Of course not. God is not taken by surprise. And I'm thinking, here's what happens when you're speaking prophetically. The thought is coming to you before you say it. You got a nanosecond. It's really what I'll have my life. And I said, so God wasn't surprised. So what does this tell you? This tells you that God knew it was going to happen. So people like you or me might be saying, isn't this going to destroy his possibilities of becoming president? But let me ask you a question. If he became president right now, without something like this, he would take credit for it because he's a very egotistic individual. But now, if he gets elected, he knows it was a miracle from God. I'm out there so far walking on the water. I go, oh my God, I'm listening to my words coming out. I don't think, oh, this is the stupidest thing. I'm just doubling down. I said, so therefore, I believe this is the necessary circumcision for Donald Trump before his promotion. I said something which I regret saying later on, but I'll tell you what it is because I know you won't tell anyone else. I said, besides that, I can show you in the Bible, where I can show you a place in the Bible where Samson, despite his horrendous and controversial background, Samson had the anointing, but I can't find one place where Jezebel actually had an anointing. And so I made my point, and it's like, oh, I know, exactly, I can't believe it. I said, okay, so that's what I shut it down. I go back down to the UN diplomatic people, I'm talking, and the guy comes back in the room, and Tom Hess. He says, oh, you see what happened with your video? I thought, oh, this guy's shocking me with every update. What? He said, over 1 million people. Now I'm having a reverse panic attack. Because I wanted to have 2,000 people covered who bought my book. I wasn't looking for 1 million. I think it goes to 2 million, to 3 million, to 4 million, all the way up. Ends up becoming like the viral video to explain the dilemma of what Christians should be doing with the Access Hollywood video. After the president gets elected, I go to Washington, and my next encounter with the political arena is, this is my appearance on CNN. This was my limo. Now, many people don't recognize me in the picture because I just got out of the limousine when Antifa came around the corner and bombed it. And I'm walking into a building, they go, hey, you're sitting on your limo? I go, oh my God, this one. There it is. So I feel a little bit like Mr. Magoo walking in the spirit these days. But I keep on stumbling into these moments of lucidity. So then I'm working with researchers from Harvard and stuff, and they give me access to Soros's network. That's Soros's giving network of 7 years ago. Of course, it's all changed and expanded since then, but can you see the complexity of the spider's web that goes along? He's just one of the funders of the anarchy. This isn't an accidental thing going on because America needs a revival. This is an intentional thing that is happening because, well, because powerful donors are funding the realignment of America through taking over the political and the academic and the media and entertainment enterprises in order to transform America by discipling the country. We were called to disciple, but we never had a theology for it. We just thought, we're great, we have churches, that's it. Never occurred to us that actually discipling a nation means you have to leave the church now and then and actually go down the street to the school system. You got to go to the government. You actually have to go to the entertainment field. You have to go to media. You might even want to show up in corporate America now and then where they're funding these things. So here's what happened. The left built the most powerful coalition in history. How do they do it? After the losses that they experienced in 2000. It was a gathering of Podesta, Harold Ickes, Rob Stein. You won't see this even in the Colorado Blueprint. This precedes the Blueprint. Sid Blumenthal and others came to develop a strategy, came together to develop a strategy that would fill in the voids in the leftist movement. And they called the group Thunder Road. So here's what they basically did. You're familiar with how Nehemiah operates, right? So what they did was they took a look at the structure of the conservative and evangelical alliance. Came together, by the way, with Ronald Reagan and kind of waltzed a little bit after that. But what happens is they took a look at all of the Family Research Council, they looked at the churches, they looked at Rush Limbaugh and Fox News, and what they do is they created this awareness of These are the engines or mechanisms that unify conservatives and evangelicals around what they think. And then what they did was, they said, what would have to exist for us to be able to hit them in the areas where they are vulnerable and counter their influence? So they came up with an ingenious plan. And the plan that they came up with was that they would form a think tank. And they would form a media mechanism. And they would form a technology, social media mechanism. They would create a get-out-the-vote mechanism. In other words, they were ingenious at building entities that could compete with what they perceived to be the strengths of our movement. What they didn't know was we were never unified in the first place. They thought we were. We never were. And actually now, we have to get unified. So what takes place over the next 10 years, they built the most powerful political coalitions we have because they had centralized funding. And this is how we did this exercise here in the auditorium. If you want to get Code Pink, which is an LGBT movement thing, and working with the Black Panthers, and you want to get an environmental group, and you want to get La Rosa, which is the immigration group, these are all funded evangelistic organizations. You see, you think that a 501c3, a 501c4, and a 520, these corporations, we always think of them as being missions and church things. The left actually has these organizations set up so they can fund them as single-issue evangelism groups. So they're out there working to evangelize 24 hours a day. You understand how that works? So they have these groups that are out there working, but how do you get them all to work together? If Ferguson is on fire, how are you going to get Code Pink and the gay organizations to work with the Black Panthers? They have nothing in common. I'll tell you how you do it. If somebody's writing the checks to both organizations, they both show up. Centralized giving. This was the ingenious thing they did. They figured if they can fund the organizations and put a blue check mark next to their name, if you want to keep getting funded, you better cooperate. So they cooperate. Did you know that was happening? This is how it works. This right now is the present iteration of what Democracy Alliance looks like. This is like, look, they have the legal teams, they got out the vote teams. They're very highly organized. These are all, by the way, 527s, 501c3s, 501c4s that are being funded by a group of like 200 to 300 super wealthy, mega rich multimillionaires who are obligated to put like at least $200,000 each into various organizations and pay $30,000 a year dues. And they do that. But you don't have to look at the national plan. You can just take a look at how this worked in Colorado. 4 wealthy progressives replicated the Democratic Party and funded their own version. In other words, what happened was a thing called McCain-Feingold. There was something that happened with campaign finance reform, which basically took the funding out of the parties, which opened Pandora's box, because now creative, wealthy people could create their own entities to fund directly, and the party no longer had control. So that opened the door for someone to create competition for the Democratic Party. The parties don't control themselves. The Republican Party doesn't exist. Did you know that? There's an RNC, but it doesn't exist. There's no statewide organizations to speak of, except in a couple of states. The Democratic Party really doesn't exist. It exists as a concept. But you know what controls the Democratic Party? It's the organizations and the donors that are the muscle behind the party right now. That's how come the whole party lurched to the left. All right, watch how this works. They created their own version of the Democratic Party in Colorado and funded it themselves. And they built a mechanism for policy generation, coalition building, leadership recruiting, and grassroots activism. The Gang of Four, as they're called, the 4 super uber wealthy people that got everybody playing on the same page, funded dozens of 501c3s, 501c4s. Every church is a 501c3. They have a bunch of them even that are activist organizations, shockingly enough. 501c4s and 527 organizations that work in perfect harmony to take down the Republican establishment and install left-leaning policymakers in its place. They created the siege engines. It's like a counterfeit apostolic strategy. If you're going to disciple a state, what are you going to do? You're going to get the wealthy people to fund it, then you're going to have a strategy that's going to carve out, create entities that are issue disciplined for certain areas that you're going to penetrate the opposition and wear them down through. Remember what Wilberforce said, who overturned slavery in Great Britain as a Christian? He said, here is the secret to winning the great battles. You must engage a sustained pattern of public persuasion. Remember those words, sustained pattern of public persuasion. The great problem we have in America is we have tremendous public persuasion with Christians among Christians, but nobody's talking about political issues. And the people that need to hear those political issues aren't hearing an articulate, anointed voice, because conservatives, for the most part, are actually more intelligent and more thoughtful on what they do than the left. The left is more emotional. The problem is, decisions are made largely by packaging an argument sometimes with emotion is more powerful than argument with logic. So we've got all these really smart people that aren't persuasive and all these dangerous people who are. That's why we need to unleash the church. They built a robust network of nonprofit entities to replace the Colorado Democratic Party with names like, and I love these names because they sound so wholesome, they're so American Pie. They sound like the names that are in the hallway out there. Alliance for Colorado Families. They were going to target seats in the House. Forward, Colorado, targeting the Senate. And then they had two field operations for the House and the Senate to get out the vote. Coalition for a Better Colorado. If you got a phone call from some of your neighbors saying, hi, I'm calling for a Coalition for a Better Colorado, of course you're not going to hear, hi, I'm calling for a Coalition for Destroying America with the Antichrist Spirit. Hello. So for this powerful, and I even get into the depth of this thing, that it's centralized giving. That's a powerful thing. Man, if we could only get Christians that have the money to be able to be more coordinated and working with a centralized strategy instead of funding their favorite nonprofit organization. Listen, I get funded myself, but I'm telling all of us, you guys got to work with a coordinated strategy. Because the people you're funding aren't necessarily working together. And what's weird is, the left that doesn't like each other work in unity, and the right who loves each other don't work together. Defeating Republicans. They recruited candidates with ties to their communities for ease of electability. They were smart. They picked people that get elected, even if they weren't crazy about their policies. The first thing was replace the Republicans. Second thing is we'll get more cooperative Democrats. But they also spared opposition. They had a brass knuckles legal entity and ties in with local liberal newspapers, so that between the media that came out and the charges of ethics and ethics questions, they would smear candidates who never got hit with this stuff before in 2004, 2005, 2000. They weren't ready for what happened. And suddenly they're coming up with all these campaign allegations against them that's coming out in the press, and they were flat-footed in how to respond, because this is like really tough practices. This makes sense to you? And then they had the technology. They were using technology back then. They developed consistent, topical messaging. If you were a pro-gun or an anti-gun person, they were at you on that. If you was climate, they were on the climate. If you were on immigrant, they were on immigration. If you were on LGBT, they were on... In other words, they could find out what your hot-button issue was and then present their candidate in the language of your interest. Which is a lot different than trying to go and tell everybody if you love America and love Jesus, because they don't, maybe. But they want to have environmental issues taken care of. So if that's their issue, then you've got to make the case that your guy is the best solution for the environmental issues. Does that make sense to you? This is like just basic marketing. But they put aside their policy differences to focus as one on winning elections. In other words, they might say, look, I know that you're all about this issue, but we can't do the issue right now. We got to beat the other guy. And so, okay, we'll do the issue later. And look at how aggressive they've been in making everyone happy with their issues ever since. They've been able to pass the legislation they want. Does this make sense to you guys? It worked so well it became the blueprint for America. It's now being squeezed between local government takeover and institutional bombardment. When I talk about institutional, you guys already know what I'm talking about. What happened was this was so successful that I believe the Democratic Party, when Barack Obama was nominated for president, that they actually did their meeting in Denver. They watched the presentation on how these guys were able to create their own version of the Democracy Alliance Colorado. And they were able to literally flip the state from being the most conservative state to becoming so overnight. It really proved the power, not of a change, like Andrew said, in the disposition of people in Colorado, but the power of focused, disciplined campaigning to get people to show up and vote in alignment with the propaganda you're giving them. And so your job is to get a better message out and mobilize better, which, by the way, there's a whole lot of dormant Christians that are out there that I believe are going to become activated now and are going to turn this thing around. I think that Colorado will be turned around. And I think that Colorado will be turned around because we're a little late to the game. But it's like, you know, we showed up after the second half and suddenly realized we should get in the game. And now here we are in the game. But the moment we get mobilized, and once we get mobilized, Colorado will flip, and then Texas will become the next national test case. You're going to see all this stuff happening. So what's happening, like the Seven Mountain stuff that I teach, is you have the nation is being shaped by whoever is controlling the institutional high places. institutional high places in media. Look how fake news has taken over the Russian narrative for so long. And then you got the Hollywood crowd. The Hollywood crowd was part of this Colorado deal, by the way, because they were behind it. They were behind what was happening. You got corporate business and all the business guys that are out there that are funding this strategy. Then you have your academia. My gosh, the kind of nuttiness that's being propagated on campuses is really, literally propagandizing young men and women into becoming socialists and activists for the party. And then, of course, you have your family and your church. What we've done is we've circled the wagons over here, but what we have to really start looking at is the long game is going to be we gotta impact that academia thing. But right now, oh, what am I doing? Government. We'll put government right here because government has grown so big. It's actually becoming the threat that is taking over all the other entities. That's what socialism is. It'll become the replacement for God over all these mountains. So we're dealing with this right now. However, the good news, Christians have already had a tremendous impact. We've already shifted something. You have to think about this. I had to listen to a former Breitbart reporter who came to a conference of mine in Orlando, and he said, I think you guys are a little pessimistic. You don't realize Christians already created a miracle. I said, what are you talking about? He said, Donald Trump's election actually was a miracle, and it shows what happens when Christians show up and do anything. Now, this is a fact. And many of you guys, maybe you guys don't know this, but Barna did some extensive research on why it was the pollsters went off. The reason why the pollsters missed it is because there was a large group of people, like the 3 to 4 million that were watching my videos, that were saying, I don't know if I like Donald Trump. He seems so crude and rude and violent and vulgar, and who knows if I can even trust him. Oh, but Hillary, I don't want her. And so it was like a choice between two things they didn't want. But here's the amazing thing. Within 48 hours of the election, an uneasiness came upon 21 million spiritually active, governmentally engaged conservatives. Spiritually active, meaning they understand the faith dialogue. Governmentally engaged, meaning they're watching Fox and listening to Rush, Mark Levine, and everybody else is conservative. So they're governmentally engaged, spiritually active conservatives in their orientation. They aren't big government liberals. But they weren't sold on Donald Trump, but something came over them and they went in. This is the weird part. With 83% unanimity, which is the highest statistical level of unity amongst in a political process in the history of evangelical politics. 83% of the 20 million went, Donald Trump it is, like that. That was why you're suddenly shocked. 107,000 votes in 3 states. We have no idea. I want you to see a graphic of how bizarre this is. All right, take a look at this. This is Trump won Pennsylvania by 68. You see that little dot right there? That's the sage-cons that showed up and flipped Pennsylvania. You see why a remnant, when we say a remnant can change, I'm giving you the visual reality, the statistical, this is why the left went crazy and had vagina hats and protested and burning limousines. Because they know it shouldn't have happened, and those that are know the data is like, how the heck? Then to make it worse, let's go see what else flipped on them. Wisconsin, 27,000 votes? You're telling me that little swatch of sage-con? Nervous Christians that went out, well, I don't know, man, but if it makes a difference, I'll vote. Boom. There it is, 27,000. And then Michigan with 11,000. Do you understand how come the left went crazy during the midterms? And how they were so incensed and agitated and knocking on doors and recruiting and getting good voters out and getting a whole group of women out. And I'll tell you right now, what we have to do is, that's 0.009 actually of all votes. We actually have to take a look at this and say, there's 30 million Christians that are registered to vote that aren't voting. I don't know where they are. I go visit them, but I can't find them. I can't figure out how to get a hold of them. But somehow we're going to have to reach for truth and liberty. Is going to have to actually talk not only to the people that we know, but we've got to get our people to be talking to the people that are that are registered to vote that don't vote because politics, what kind of we have to actually educate them that they'd be thinking differently if it was their kid on the airplane and the cockpit was being stormed. Believe me, they'd be thinking, oh, I just want to do something. Yeah, no kidding, knucklehead. You're the one who does it. So, Nehemiah said this. He said, the work is great. The rebuilding of the wall. We've got to recover the unity and the coherence of a wall around America. You know, the Proverbs 25 is something very interesting. It says that a man without self-control is like a city without walls, broken into and plundered. When you look at the issue with the wall in America, when you look at the issue on the border with Mexico, it has less to do with immigration than it has to do with the collective disposition of Americans to have the ability to manage themselves. And we have a party that is into anarchy rather than securing the best interests of the countries. And if you want to really think about it, the thought process that is behind the real high-level socialists is they are into the deconstruction of the modern nation state. They really don't want borders between nations. They're looking at like a one-world type system where the elite's running it. It's back-ending right into the Bible. But here's the point. Satan is always trying to move out of the timing of God, and whatever happens in the future, I'm going to tell you this is not that time, and the nation doesn't have to go there. Doesn't have to go there. Key Bible verse says, for the want of people is the destruction of any prince. That means for the lack of support, that a good candidate can be overturned by a bad candidate. You know what the truth is? Most politicians will not tell you this at a Christian gathering. But they'll say we're a very fickle group of people. They can't, like one senator said to my friend to me, said, I guess I'd be a lot bolder in Washington if you were a little bit bolder back home. But you guys don't stay in the fight. You quit, and then we're left alone, and you don't show up. And so we have to look at where a reliable constituency is. And so far, it hasn't been you. But Donald Trump has changed that. He has created some kind of a weird alchemy with his audience, which only drives the left further crazy. By the way, I predicted the term Trump derangement syndrome. In my book, I predicted the term Trump derangement. It's in my book. Before he was elected, I said the media's going to have some kind of a mental paralysis called Trump derangement. I said it. And so what happens is they can't reach people like you, no matter what they throw at you. They try everything they can. Normally, they can make any politician genuflect to what they want. This is the president that actually gets in a fight with them. But you shouldn't be surprised because he gets in a fight with the Pope. He gets in a fight with everybody. So Nehemiah said the work is great and we're separated. So what we're working on now is an organizational chart. I think every one of you that's here is a separate organization. The more conservative organizations we have, the better. That's all the displays that are out there. But here's our challenge. We have to be able to know what each other's doing. Because while more is better, we don't need to replicate what we already got. And where replication happens, we need to be directing those people so that they're actually hitting the people that need to hear it instead of talking to the same people all the time. Does that make sense? Yes. So we need an organization. You'd be surprised how we do not know who else is out there doing the same work we're doing. So I'm working on that right now with a group of donors. It's creating a large chart, see how successful we are. But it's based on like those 7 mountains. I'm saying, who do we have that are the churches that are working with us? Who do we have in media, social media and print media? Who do we have in education and academia? Because if you separate those silos, you actually have the way in which the left organizes. We can find out where the body of Christ is and where sympathetic people are. All right, so we have to educate. We have to produce the content to equip and unify the grassroots. Truth and Liberty is doing this. I want to turn the content we're making and what Truth and Liberty is doing, I want to put it into resource kits that go into kits that are going to be in people's homes. Kind of like they go into the house so that intercessors and people can access. Because here's what I'm going to tell you. The average Christian does not know how to answer the worldview questions that come at them. We know what is right, we know what is wrong, but we don't know how to articulate it. And you cannot say, the Bible says. Because the Bible says doesn't work for somebody who doesn't want to hear you quote the Bible. So you can actually have the wisdom of the Bible and not tell them where it comes from. But they aren't compelled to agree with you because of the authority of Scripture. I'll never forget, my first experience with doing this was I get called in, I didn't even want to do this. I should have seen the handwriting on the wall. I'm in Rhode Island, This is after I was in corporate America, before I moved down to Texas and was doing the stuff I'm doing now. I pastored a church for a while. I was a consultant to local churches. I pastored a church, and I got a call. Lane's got to come down to the Republican State House because they're going to be voting on same-sex marriage. I said, I'm not having a fight with gays. I'm not fighting with anybody. I'm just trying to preach the gospel and love people and get them saved. They said, Lane, you have to show up because the ACLU is there. All of the unions are there. They've got the teachers union there. Everyone's showing up, and we need your voice. I said, well, okay, I'll try to get there. Anyway, I took my time because he said the room was filling up for the people that had a testimony. And you have a certain number of seats. There's 300 seats in an overflow crowd, like 1,000 people. And I thought if I took my time, I probably wouldn't have to speak, but I'll make it. So I kind of like looked for some notes and put some notes together. I looked up what Jim Dobson says about homosexuality. I printed it out, I put it in my pocket. I get down to the State House, unfortunately, in my church. One of my deacons was working at the Capitol. And he goes, Pastor, come here. I already signed you in. I go, Richard, that's a serious breach of Christian ethics to sign Pastor's name in. He goes, don't worry about it. I got you in there. It's filling up fast. So I go in there. Every seat's taken. And a lady gets up to go forward to go testify. And she goes forward and she goes to testify. As soon as she gets up, he shoves me in her seat. She came back, she couldn't find her seat, so she left. And I thought, I can see where this is going. I think the Lord's going to have it. So, gradually, the room is like, going on, and it's getting down to that. The Christians would go up there. God bless them. They go up there with a little Bible. And they go, the Bible says in Romans chapter something or other, God condemns homosexuality. And of course the lady who was a representative would say, yes ma'am, thank you very much. Are you aware of the fact that this is a political discussion and not a religious discussion? I appreciate your opinion. Next, I saw dismissing Christians left and right. But you think a thinking Christian would be watching that and change their strategy. No, the next one goes up on a Bible verse. So I'm thinking, oh, I see how this goes. If someone has a doctorate degree, or if they're a business person, or if they're a psychologist, it's the currency of influence in the room. You can't quote the Bible. You say, well, we have a daycare. We have the largest daycare in the state of Rhode Island. And I figured that, a little Jewish arithmetic, I could say we've influenced probably between the families we have and the families that have come through, maybe 20 or 30,000 people in the largest daycare. I do have that honorary doctorate from that theological Bible school. So I sat down and said, my name is Dr. Wallnau. I'm running the state's largest daycare. And I would say that we're in touch with these 20 or 30,000 voting constituents who would like to tell you a message. They all leaned in like this. Message. I got ready. With the market, I said, are you familiar with the Danish study? They didn't know what I'm talking about. This is where same-sex marriage has already been approved, and they're now analyzing the impact upon divorce and childhood development. And I can see the woman who sponsored the legislation going, calling her, who is this? Who is this guy and what's he talking about? And I said, evidently you haven't done your homework on this. And then I read something I never should have done. I read Dr. Dobson's language. Please do not subject our children to the status of lab rats in a vast untried social experiment. And I hear, screams are breaking out, yelling, there's objects flying. And they say lab rats. And there's like, oh, the owner of this door, owner is it? And I said, thank you. And I went on to the hallway. One state senator stops me in the hallway. He goes, I don't know who you are. Believe me, we're going to be checking you out right now. But if you are who you say you are, you go back and tell your friends and your constituents, the people that you have influence with, these are the kinds of arguments that have to come into this room for us who want to support you to vote for you. Then he says, I want you to put that message in the Projo tomorrow morning. Well, I didn't want to be ignorant. I didn't know what the Projo was. Sounds to me like some kind of athletic ointment. I said, you bet. You know, and my deacon goes, that was good, Pastor. I think you really hit on the one there. Good, Pastor. I said, Richard, what's the brochure? That's the Providence Journal. He wants you to put that in the editorial section of the Providence Journal tomorrow because he's going to be voting with you. It's going to be very close. It was overturned. Same-sex marriage was overturned and delayed, just delayed, for a year by one vote. That does it.
Wow.
But there's a world of instruction in the story because I was an absolute neophyte going in. I had to figure out how to reposition myself so that I had some kind of social capital that would be influential, and it worked out really well. It worked in that case for a year. The part that I want you to think about is we're going to have to be equally savvy, but there are mechanisms to helping the legislators get elected, to helping flip the government, and but it's going to require that we be as disciplined and as smart as the opposition is, because we're not against nonsense. They're succeeding in discipling America. Does that make sense? But we have something working for us. We got the Sage Council. Oh, what I want to do? I think I got this idea for Truth. Truth and Liberty is doing the content and in social media. I'm thinking about America as one. What I'm interested in doing is going out. Just like with church planting and the grassroots organization, the more the better. I want to go out to the swing states. You saw how small the margin is. Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, North Carolina. My goal is to go out and do rallies with believers in those states to make sure that we can double the margin that shows up. Does that make sense? Because prayer without works is dead. For all you Bible verse people that get this, the translation, prayer without corresponding action is impotent. You have to do something when you believe something. And so the praying for America for revival is step one. Step two is what we do. And part of that has to be, we need to gather those pencils together so that people can feel the fact that they're not alone. Because you're alone when you're out there in the shadow of Mordor with media and your friends and school systems. But there really is more of us than they know, or we wouldn't have got 60 million votes for Donald Trump. So what we're going to be doing is, we already sold out of books, I'm sorry, but I want you to get the book, because the book is a prophetic outline for what's happening in America, and it's not done yet. I wrote the book prophetically. It's still happening right now. But we'll send you the book. You sign up, you help us get in touch with you and your organization, fill out a card back at the table, and I'll send you a digital copy of the book, because we ran out of books. You say, that's fair enough? And that's me, I'm Lance. And Andrew, I believe something significant is being inaugurated right here, and I'm telling you, I'm not saying this capriciously. I believe that if we mobilize the resources we have available in Colorado and use them intelligently, we can begin the process of reversing the takeover of the state and show other states how to do it. And just like Sage Council, we will make history. Thank you.